Good evening, Forest community members. Welcome to our Forest Focus webinar this evening. As always, we're not expecting technical difficulties, but please do bear with us if we encounter any problems. At the end of our time together, if you'd be so kind to complete the feedback survey, that would be great. We're always looking to improve on what we do. And at the end, a QR code will come up for you to be able to do that. Today, our theme is faith, belief, and identity. Why skills for dialogue matter. And we're delighted to welcome Phil Champain, who is Director of the Faith and Belief Forum. And he will also be joined a bit later on by Carrie Elderton, Head of Programmes and Impact. There will be an opportunity for you to ask any questions along the way by writing in the comments. And at the end, we'll have some time to discuss any of those questions. We're all aware we're living in a world context that has brought about an increasing sense of polarization. And so the role and importance of dialogue feels ever more pertinent. Tonight's not a time to discuss specifics of details of conflict, but it's a time to hear and share more about the expertise of the Faith and Belief Forum and how they are bringing that expertise into the conversation and into our school community and life and learning here at Forest. Our next webinar will be coming up on the 23rd of November, and I'd also encourage you to join for that one, which will be focused on futures at Forest. So without further ado, let me briefly introduce you to Phil. Phil's been Director of the Faith and Belief Forum for the last 8.5 years. The Faith and Belief Forum is one of the leading interfaith NGOs in the UK, working to strengthen relations between people of different faiths and beliefs through award-winning programmes in schools, universities, communities and workplaces. And Phil has been Director for the last 8.5 years and joined to apply his peace-building experience to a more UK context. And I'm delighted to hand over to Phil now to tell us more about the work of the Faith and Belief Forum. Thank you, Phil.
Hello, everybody. It's a really great privilege for me to be able to speak with you and to really underline the importance of our relationship with Forest School. So thank you, Louisa. I want to talk a bit about the organisation that I work for, the Faith and Belief Forum, and I'll be joined a bit later by, as Louisa said, by Carrie Alderton. So I want to begin by saying something about myself, because I think the work that we do is very much about individual faith and belief. We encourage an exploration of our own personal faiths and beliefs, and that's something that's not always easy to do or sometimes not encouraged. But I thought to begin with, I might just say something about myself. So this is my father. So my father was an Anglican priest, and I was brought up as an Anglican, but I think over the journey of my faith has led me to identify more as a Christian agnostic. And I think this reflects for me the fluidity of our faiths and beliefs, the way in which we're all on a journey, and the way in which our faiths are all has a kind of element of personal experience and difference. So in my family, my faith and how I see my faith is very different to my father's, and also to my sister, who was a born again Christian, and I have two brothers as well, but I won't go into them. But But that's something about myself. So I've come to this, as Louisa says, from a peace building background, but I also recognize that understanding our faith identity and our beliefs is really important to getting on with each other, to understanding the world around us and the communities we live in. So why does the Faith and Belief Forum exist? Just touching on a few points here. I think the UK is becoming more diverse, I think, and I'll show you a few statistics a bit later that might back this up. But we have an increasing number of people who are born outside the UK. They bring with them different faiths and beliefs. We also have a history that is steeped in different waves of immigration and demographic change. So our society is rich in its diversity, and it's becoming richer. I think some statistics that back this up, I suppose, is that I'll come back to that actually. I think the other thing I wanted to say about that diversity is our complexity of faith. The complexity of faith and belief is also something becoming increasingly important to handle. The number of people who don't identify with a religious faith is increasing. The expressions of faith within different dominations are very different, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim. And so the complexity of faith and belief is something that we need to dig into and understand when we are talking with each other. I think also the third point, we live in a global village, and we've seen recently how the impacts of what happens abroad can actually have a big impact on how people relate in this country, whether it's conflict in the Middle East, whether it's politics and faith relations in South Asia. But these global issues and through the increasing significance of social media come into our lives here. So I think we are a diverse society. We have a complex faith and belief landscape. We live in an interconnected world, which brings a lot of influences from outside. Interestingly, during COVID, we saw the power of faith and belief organizations come to the fore. And I think the other thing that is happening in this country is that there is an increasing realization of the power of faith. So yes, it's complex. Yes, we need to understand it. But faith is also a very powerful agent for bringing about change and to make our societies better. And I think that was shown a lot during the COVID pandemic. I think faith and community is also, as a result, being celebrated a bit more. I think sometimes faith can be seen as a problem, but it's also being celebrated as an important part of the communities we live in. So the final point there is that perhaps faith is a bond. It's an influence that can be bonding for our communities, but it also can be polarizing. So my organization engages with this context and engages with the complexity of faith, but also it's driven by this importance for us to understand it, to engage with it, to talk about it, to celebrate it, and to realize that people's different faiths and beliefs are not something to be worried about. There's something to celebrate and something to engage with each other, and that is how we develop as human beings and in terms of our social development. So I was talking about people born outside the UK. This is just some statistics. I thought I need to give you some statistics. So here are a few. Just over 4% of the UK population in 1951 were born outside the UK. And that was about 1.9 million at that time. In 2011, it increased to 13%, 7.5 million. In 2020, it was 16%, 10 million. And in London, obviously, there are different geographic differences and variations, but in London, the percentage of people born outside the UK is 35%. So this shows you the influences that are coming into the country. In terms of faiths, we can see that this means that in terms of the 2021 census, which was released, the data released recently, it showed that Christianity is the largest religion in the UK, followed by Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, Judaism, and Buddhism, and that the number of people who, as I said before, that don't identify with a religious belief is actually increasing. I think it was 37% indicated that they didn't affiliate with a religious faith. And you can see there from the statistics that the kind of diversity and complexity of faith is changing. Those who, although Christianity is the largest religion, its proportion in our population in terms of the people who identify with Christianity is decreasing. Muslim population is increasing, and you can see the other statistics there. So the 2020-21 census also gives you some predictions for the future, or that they some estimates about how those percentages are going to pan out in the future. So this is a picture of increasing diversity, and it's something that we should celebrate, but also something that we need to understand and engage with. Also, another statistic which might be interesting for you is that as a society becomes more ethnically and religiously diverse, it's also significant that 44% of us have no contact with anyone from a different ethnic background. That's in our wider social network. So there's diversity on the one hand increasing, but also a lack of contact with different ethnic and religious groups on the other. So part of our work is try to address that lack of contact and to encourage more engagement between people of different faiths and beliefs. The other issue with diversity is that there tends to be at the moment rising hate crime, and another reason for us to exist as an organization, why we encourage understanding of different faiths and beliefs and identities, is that we believe that's important to reduce prejudice and to prevent hate crime. And religiously motivated hate crimes, you can call those anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, other forms of religiously motivated hate crimes. Those increased by 37% between 2001 and 2022. And two organizations that monitor Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, the Community Security Trust, CST, they monitor anti-Semitism and incidents of anti-Semitism, and Tell Mama monitor incidents of Islamophobia. Both organizations have recorded record increases in those two forms of hate since the 7th October attacks on Israel by Hamas. So this shows the impact of incidents overseas on communities here, and also the worrying increase in religiously motivated hate crime in our communities. So this is why, again, come back to why we exist. We need to encourage contact between people of different faiths and beliefs. We need to start in schools. We need to deepen that appreciation of difference and how to get to know each other. Our founder, interestingly, we were founded by three prominent faith leaders: a Jewish faith leader, Sir Sigmund Sternberg, and a Muslim, Zaki Badawi, and a Christian, Marcus Braybrook. And this is a quote from the Jewish leader, Sigmund Sternberg, all the way back when we were called the Three Faiths Forum, rather than the Faith and Belief Forum. But he said this, which I think is very relevant today, and basically saying that, attitudes cannot be changed by orders or laws. So we need to work on education. We need to work on dialogue. They can only be changed, these attitudes towards each other, in an atmosphere generated within the grassroots, he says, which I would include schools in that, where there's a willingness to listen to other voices, and skills developed so that we can listen to other voices and ask the right questions. So that's a bit of the why. So what are our goals? We have, our overarching mission is to strengthen relations between people of different faiths and beliefs for those reasons that I've outlined just now. We have three specific goals that we focus on to do that, to strengthen those relations. One is to equip learners, because we feel that it's really important to have the skills. That there are sets of skills that you need in order to help you engage with others. Whether those are skills of active listening, whether those are skills of being openly critical of what you read and what you hear in the media, whether it's about skills about how to ask questions in a way that can get positive responses. But we need to equip learners with the skills that they need to be able to navigate those different faith and belief identities. But we're also interested in generating social change, and this is important because of the structures in society that block our ability to connect with each other, and so we need to also do work to try and generate social change, whether that's around trying to combat hate crime, whether it's about indeed trying to change education policy so that there's more work can be done like the work that we do. But we need to generate that social change in order to improve those relations. And finally, we feel it's very important to project the voices of those from different faith and belief backgrounds, particularly those from minority faiths, who I think often feel marginalized or unheard, or the subject of and the target of religiously motivated hate. So we need to give voices to those from different faith and belief communities, and to celebrate that diversity. So those are our three goals. Moving on to sort of picking up on the equipping learners, because I think that will be the most important and significant goal really to focus on here, because it's about our work with Forest School, and Carrie and Louisa will be able to dig deeper into this. But it's interesting that the Department for Education, we were part of an independent research report that was examining some of the approaches being used in schools and colleges to promote social integration. That's their word, the Department for, or their phrase, social integration. But really what they're talking about is other people might call it social cohesion, but the ability of us to get on with each other in communities, given that we're often from different faith and belief backgrounds. But they were looking at what schools and colleges are doing to promote that. And this is a report published this year. But they were saying in this report that schools should promote community cohesion and shared values, such as respect and tolerance for those of other faiths and beliefs. And that in doing this, they can do three things. They can address three things. One is the importance of social mixing. And and we really believe that changing attitudes, as Sir Sigmund said, one of our founders, it really comes through dialogue and engagement. So we need to encourage that social mixing within and beyond educational settings and local communities. So it'll be interesting to hear from Louisa and Carrie what Forest is doing through working with us about that social mixing. But also it will address skills and knowledge. As I said before, helps equip children and young people with the skills and knowledge to become active citizens in wider society. Our young people will grow up and take up jobs and have families and engage in an increasingly diverse society. To be active citizens and to do that in the best way, equipping them with the skills in school is going to prepare them and put them in a great position in later life. And the third is access. So supporting positive interactions with different kinds of people, breaking down barriers. I think we can often stay in our bubbles, including online communities, actually, but we need to sort of look at breaking down those bubbles and providing access to opportunity to engage with people different to ourselves, because often that access is hard. We might go to a school which is predominantly of one religious and ethnic group. We might circulate in our social networks without much contact with those who are different to ourselves. So supporting that access and enabling that access is really important. So this is what the Department for Education are saying, and it's what our work is trying to support. So finally, and before I hand over to Louise, I wanted to sort of, just as a way of handing over a bit to Louisa and Carrie, is to just introduce a bit of the what we are doing in this education space. So I've talked a bit about why we do what we do and the context that we work within our society, the increasing diversity of faith and belief, its complexity, hate crime, but also the diversity of faith as something to celebrate and to engage with, a richness. So what are we doing practically in terms of pushing that forward? And here are a few things I just mentioned here. So we do this program called Encountering Faith and Beliefs, which is bringing speakers into schools who are from different faith and belief backgrounds. So we would bring a Buddhist, a Jew, a Muslim into the school, and we would facilitate them to tell their stories about their faith and for the young people to ask questions. They would speak very much from their own personal faith perspective rather than generalizing. So as I said at the beginning, when I shared my father and my own bit of my own faith, that's what we encourage our speakers to talk about. So we run these workshops and they're called Encountering Faith and Beliefs. We also do what we call school linking, which is we link classes from different schools. So there may be a school which has a high proportion of Muslims. There may be another school which doesn't. So we would link those two schools and provide opportunities for them to learn together. And that's getting at this access point, and it's also getting at this social mixing point where the young people would have an opportunity to mix and learn together with people different to themselves. We also develop online resources. We promote these on the Times Educational Supplement website, and they're free resources, and they can be downloaded by teachers and others to help them deliver lessons on exploring identity and faith. We also increasingly are developing work which connects schools with home. And this might be interesting to some of you on the webinar, but we are developing some work which encourages pupils to bring in objects from their home environment and to share that in the classroom that say something about their faith and belief. And once they've discussed that in the school, they would swap them and take back home a different object. So this takes this connects the kind of exploration of faith and belief in the classroom with the home context, because we know that schools and homes need to collaborate and work together on this. It's really important that that schools and communities are connected in this exploration of faith and belief, because it's a societal issue and it needs collaboration. And as you'll hear from Louisa and Carrie, perhaps, we also work with a few schools on a whole school approach on trying to look at developing a whole ethos within a school that was encouraging this exploration and curiosity around faith and belief identity. And Forest School is one of those schools we're working with. I do have a video. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm going to try, because I thought before I sign off, it would be really important to see if we can get some young voices in. And what I'm going to try and show you here, on technology permitting, is a video that that shows a manifesto that some young people from a school who we worked with put together this video that really expresses from their own perspective why it's important to share and talk about our identity and our faith identity as part of that multi-layered identity that we all have. So this is something that they developed, and you'll see from this, although it was made in 2017, it's still, I think, very relevant today, given what is currently happening in our society. So I will try this. I don't think it's going to work. I think the technology has beaten us, I think. So there we have it. I now will hand over to Louisa again, and to Carrie. Carrie is our head of programs and impact, but she's very much overseeing our work with schools. So I will pass back to Louisa and Carrie now.
Thank you so much, Phil, and thank you for helping with that kind of overall context and just helping to reflect on why this is so important, why skills for dialogue matter. So I thank you, Carrie, also for joining us. And I wondered if you could start by, Phil mentioned there about the different programs, the different resources that you work with different schools with, and for schools like Forest, the whole school approach. I wondered if you could tell us more about what are some of the core skills that you feel come through the programs that you run with schools. What are the core skills for exploring identity and skills for dialogue?
Thank you so much, Louisa, and thanks for having us this evening, and good evening to everybody. It's great to be with you all. We explore a lot of skills for dialogue in our programs. I guess the one that's been mentioned already is curiosity. So the ability and the interest in learning about others. And one of the main skills and the set of skills that we develop within that is how to ask questions effectively and how to answer questions effectively. So that's really some very important skills that I know that we've been working with you in Forest on, and having those skills up on the wall, having the teachers equipped and knowing how to use them, having the students just have them at the top of their mind, means that when we have these really difficult and sometimes quite controversial conversations, we know what we can use, and we know what we can use to bring that conversation back to the people involved and mean that we can really empathize in the other. And I guess that is kind of the second skill, really, is about building empathy. And for us, a big part of building empathy is through storytelling. and the ability of storytelling to be able to break down the assumptions we have about the other, and help us to understand all the multifaceted parts of their identity as an individual. So as Phil mentioned, one of our key programs within the schools team is our Encountering Faith and Belief workshops. And a big part of our methodology there is to teach our speakers how to tell their story in a way that has a narrative arc that is relevant to students at whatever age they are, and give the students the opportunity to see them as people who struggle just in the same way that they do. And I think that leads me on to another skill which is really important, which is investigation of one's own identity, and using that as a lens to be able to understand and grapple with other people's identity and worldviews. Faith is just one part of that. Religion is just one part of that. There are so many aspects that can make up our worldview as people. And that was one of the key reasons why we actually rebranded from the Faith and Belief, from the Three Faiths Forum to the Faith and Belief Forum, to show that we are embracing all different types of belief. And that's much wider than just religious belief or faith belief, that all of us have a worldview, and the understanding and learning more about that worldview and analysing it can really help us to empathise and understand others too. So that's just sort of 3 to start off with, but we have explored lots more with yourselves and with other schools.
Yeah, and really core to all of the programs that the Faith and Belief Forum run. And one of the things that really impressed me from the start, and one of the reasons that as a school we've kept being connected and evolving this partnership together, is that often we will say to the pupils, these things don't just happen by accident. There are skills to be investigating ourselves, our own identity, and skills for dialogue. And one of the things that's been really important, I think, is the research that's gone into that. And the Faith and Belief Forum is connected with a lot of research that informs your programs. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about some of the research behind the programs that happen.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the key theory that we work on is social contact theory. And this is a theory that's been around for about 60 years. And it really argues that through effective dialogue and encounter between people from different social groups and people who would typically kind of other each other, we can break down stereotypes, we can break down assumptions, and we can bring people closer together. So I just have a quote actually that's about social contact theory. If I could just read that out, I think it might help us in this conversation. So this is from when the contact theory was first kind of formulated in 1954, and it's been developed and tested quite a lot since then. So it's from Gordon Allport, who was one of the founders of it. So he says, prejudice, unless deeply rooted in the character structure of the individual, may be reduced by equal status contact between majority and minority groups in the pursuit of common goals. The effect is greatly enhanced if this contact is sanctioned by institutional supports, i.e. by law or custom or local atmosphere, and provided it is of a sort that leads to the perception of common interests and common humanity between the members of the two groups. So for social contact theory to really succeed, we need the support of authority, we need the support of school. And I think that's why it has been so effective within Forest School, because you have shown that there is support from all throughout SLT, governors, like throughout the curriculum, that we're really supporting the work that the students are doing. And I think that has that action and the support throughout the structure means that students feel supported to really understand each other and get all the benefits from social contact theory. And another really important part of contact theory is that you have a common goal. And I know that lots have been explored through the project with yourselves. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think our first connection with the Faith and Belief Forum was through the school's linking programme. And that's where I first came across some of the research that informs the programmes that you do. And from our very first linking programme, the impact was seen in the pupils in not only exploring their own identity, but also exploring and having opportunity to explore alongside others. And one of the principles involved in that is that there are 3 encounters throughout the year. One is hosted in one school space, the other is hosted in the second school space, and the third in a neutral community space. And I think that reinforces that sense of this is a shared journey. This is about building relationship. This is about connecting. And I think what has happened here at Forest is that from that initial starting point, we've then been able to embed that throughout different programs for the pupils who have appreciated it and exploring and having more of this opportunity. And I wonder, what for you would be your biggest hope of the impact of the work that you do at Forest School, at other schools? What would you hope your biggest hope for the impact to be for the young people and our world?
It's a big question. And that's kind of like what gets me up in the morning, really. Yeah. So I think one huge thing, I'm going to mention a couple, sorry, I don't know if I can choose just one, but a massive thing for me is the ability to build friendships. I think the linking program, you know, we've been running it for over 20 years actually, and we've heard from students whose classes were linked like 10 years ago and they're still friends. And that is hugely powerful, and that adds massively to social cohesion. But it also means that when students throughout their lives might encounter, let's say at the moment, anti-Semitic or Islamophobic tropes or stereotypes or messages from the media, which are incredibly divisive, they can say to themselves, oh, but I've met someone like that and I had a really positive experience. Maybe I went to their school, maybe we played like rounders. And it means that they have something personal to refer back to as a kind of like ethical, critical reasoning tool, where they can really refer to their own personal experiences. So I think that is hugely important. And lots of studies show that encounter early on in life really does shape your understanding. And I think it doesn't only shape your success academically and within your career. It means that you're a productive member of your community. But I think that more powerful for me than that, it allows students the opportunity to really explore their own understanding of the world, their own spirituality, and learn from the richness of others. And through that, understand more about the diversity of the world. And I think that for me, that's more inspiring and more motivating than, their career success. I think, it's about all of the aspects of that student's life and then what they feel they are able to really explore with others sort of later on.
And one final question. We're, as I think Phil mentioned before, and we're here in this webinar connecting as a Forest community. So that's pupils, that's staff, that's parents, carers, and expertise from people like yourselves. What can families do to nourish and support these skills that the pupils are learning at school for good dialogue and good connection within community? What's the role of families to support and nourish those skills?
I think there's a lot of different things I could say to this question, but a key part of it, I think, is stepping back and questioning. Maybe if you're watching the news together, thinking about what narratives are being told to us. And there's lots of tools that we could point you to in terms of how to have those conversations and how to think critically about the different things that we are hearing about people from different cultures and beliefs, and modeling that in the home, modeling that when we're talking about how much time is spent on social media, for example, and what that means and how that shapes our children's perceptions, I think is really important. I'd also encourage families to take time to explore your own worldview with your children and ask some of the bigger questions. We've just finished a pilot project in London that was exploring working with families through an object-oriented learning project. So they took the objects of other faiths and beliefs into the home and then used that to explore their own identity and their own worldview and think about how it related to other people's identities and worldviews. And the parents and the kids absolutely loved it. They loved the opportunity to sit down. Sometimes they did it like instead of story time before bed. Sometimes they did it like around the dining room table. And I think that modeling that in the home and having the bravery to kind of analyze and explore your own identity and what makes up your own worldview really helps children to prepare to be able to properly sort of meet and encounter others and have productive dialogue.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carrie and Phil, for sharing with us this evening. Tomorrow evening, we have an event at Forest where we've invited teachers and guests from other schools and organisations to come and learn a bit more and look at some of the resources that can be helpful in their contexts. And we continue in this partnership with the Faith and Belief Forum, continue this journey of equipping the young people and equipping us as a school community to explore why faith, belief and identity matter, why skills for dialogue are a thing to be learnt and practiced and practiced and practiced, and the hope that we then can be that more connected community as a school, which then has that ripple out effect into our wider community and the wider world. So thank you, and thank you for all those who've joined us. There will be, in a moment, there'll be a QR code that comes up, and the QR code is your opportunity to link into the feedback, and I'd really encourage you to complete that form. That helps us to continue to improve on all of these webinars, and any feedback on or questions that you might have following our discussions this evening. So thank you very much for joining us.